The rich cowboy came back too late. The widow who saved his parents changed his heart forever. Ethan Cole had always been a man of two worlds. On one hand, he was known as the richest cowboy in the region, a man whose name carried weight in business circles and whose presence could make any town sit up and take notice. On the other hand, he was a son who had grown distant, more absorbed in the pursuit of wealth, adventure, and reputation than in the quiet, steady life of his family. For years, Ethan had traveled across the plains, the deserts, and the mountains, chasing new deals, new opportunities, and the thrill of the unknown. His parents, who had once been vibrant and full of life, had grown older and frail, waiting in the little house they had built together, hoping each day for his return. The Cole family home sat on a gentle slope just outside the small town of Willow Creek, surrounded by fields of golden wheat and shaded by towering oak trees. It had been the center of Ethan's childhood. The smell of fresh bread from the kitchen, the sound of his father's laughter carrying across the porch, and the warm glow of lanterns at night were all things he had loved. But as the years passed and he wandered farther from home, those memories became faint echoes. He thought of them sometimes, especially when he counted his wealth or planned his next journey, but they rarely held him for long. Ethan's father, Robert Cole, had once been a strong man, proud and hard-working, known throughout the town for his fairness and kindness. His mother, Margaret Cole, was gentle, with a smile that could light up the darkest day. Together they had taught Ethan to ride, to care for the land, and to respect others. They had poured their hearts into their son, believing that one day he would return and carry forward the family name with honor and integrity. But life had a way of testing patience, and Ethan's long absence weighed heavily on them. They missed him terribly, but never complained. Instead, they focused on helping the community, tending to their neighbors' needs, and keeping the family farm running as best they could. During this time, Clara Bennett had entered their lives, a widow with a quiet strength. She was known in Willow Creek for her kindness and courage. Though she had faced her own hardships, losing her husband years earlier, she never let sorrow define her. Instead, she channeled her energy into helping others, especially those who were vulnerable or in need. She often visited the Cole family home, checking on Robert and Margaret, bringing meals, tending to the garden, and keeping the house warm and welcoming. The townspeople admired her, whispering that she had a heart bigger than anyone they had ever known. Yet, she never sought recognition or reward. Her actions came purely from a place of love and compassion. Ethan had not been aware of Clara's role in his family's life. He had spent so many years away that he had no idea how much she had done to care for his parents. He assumed, as many travelers do, that life would always wait for him, that the world would pause until he returned. But time does not wait, and the years had left their mark. Parents had aged, their steps slower, their voices softer, their hands trembling slightly as they went about their daily chores. The house, though still filled with warmth, had grown quieter. The echoes of laughter that once rang through the rooms had faded, replaced by the soft rustling of leaves outside and the gentle ticking of the old clock on the wall. On the day Ethan finally returned to Willow Creek, he rode into town with the pride of a man who had achieved much. His horse trotted proudly beneath him, and the shine of his boots and the cut of his coat spoke of his success. But the town had changed little. People still waved from porches, children still ran barefoot through the streets, and the smell of fresh bread from the bakery still mingled with the earthy scent of the fields. Ethan felt a strange mix of nostalgia and unease. He had imagined this moment countless times, thinking he would be welcomed with open arms and cheers. Yet, as he approached his family home, an unfamiliar tension gripped him. He dismounted and walked up the familiar path to the front door, his heart beating faster with anticipation. The door opened before he could knock, and there she was, Clara Bennett. Her hair was tied back neatly, her hands slightly rough from work, and her eyes carried a calm, determined warmth. She looked at him with a mixture of surprise and caution. "Ethan," she said softly. "It's been a long time." Ethan swallowed, realizing that words alone could not bridge the gap of years. "Clara," he replied, his voice quieter than he had expected. I didn't realize you've been," he trailed off, unsure how to finish the sentence. How could he express the mix of guilt, gratitude, and astonishment he felt all at once? Clara only smiled faintly, understanding more in his silence than any words could convey. Inside the house, Ethan saw his parents. They were sitting together in the living room, holding hands, their faces lined with age and experience. They looked smaller than he remembered, their strength worn thin by time and illness. For a moment, Ethan felt a pang of regret, so sharp that it took his breath away. He had spent so many years away chasing wealth and adventure, believing that success alone could bring him happiness. Yet here, in this quiet home, surrounded by the simple yet profound love of his parents and the gentle care of Clara, he realized how much he had missed. Clara had kept everything running. She had cooked meals, tended the garden, and made sure the house was warm in the winter and cool in the summer. She had comforted his mother when she was sick, encouraged his father when he felt weak, and even helped them manage the small finances of the farm. All this she did without expecting thanks or reward. She had become the backbone of the household, and Ethan, despite his wealth and influence, felt powerless in comparison. Over the next few days, Ethan tried to reconnect with his parents. He brought gifts, offered money, and even suggested hiring help to ease their burden. But each time, his parents would gently refuse, reminding him that their greatest wish was not wealth, but the presence of their son. Clara, observing quietly, smiled at these interactions. She knew that Ethan needed to learn something far more valuable than money, that true care, true responsibility, and true love could not be bought. Ethan's evenings were spent walking through the fields he had once played in as a boy, observing the crops, the old barn, and the small creek where he had learned to fish. Memories came flooding back. His father teaching him to ride, his mother showing him how to tend the garden, Clara's soft voice from the few times she had visited long ago. Each memory reminded him of the life he had left behind and the people he had taken for granted. He realized that no amount of wealth could replace the connection he had lost. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold, Ethan sat on the porch with Clara. The air was filled with the quiet sounds of nature, the chirping of crickets, the rustling of leaves, and the distant lowing of cows. He spoke for the first time about his travels, his achievements, and his regrets. Clara listened patiently, nodding gently, never interrupting, never judging. Her presence was a reminder that kindness and understanding could heal even the deepest wounds. By the end of the week, Ethan began to see the depth of Clara's impact. She had not only kept his parents safe and comfortable, but had also created a space where love, patience, and compassion thrived. She had changed the way he saw the world, reminding him that heroism often comes in quiet, unnoticed acts rather than grand gestures. He realized that his parents' love, combined with Clara's selflessness, was more powerful than any wealth or adventure he had ever known. Ethan understood, perhaps for the first time in his life, that coming home was not about reclaiming his place or proving his success. It was about acknowledging the sacrifices of those who had cared for him, about learning humility, and about reconnecting with the people and values that truly mattered. And as he watched Clara tend to his mother's flowers in the garden, a feeling of gratitude and respect filled him, a feeling that marked the beginning of a change he did not yet fully understand, but would soon embrace. After a week at the family home, Ethan began to truly notice the rhythm of life he had missed for so many years. The days moved differently here. They were not measured by meetings, contracts, or bank statements, but by sunlight falling across the fields, the soft cooing of birds in the morning, the smell of fresh bread baking, and the laughter of neighbors passing by. He had thought he knew hard work, but now he saw it in a new light. The toil of tending to the land, preparing meals, mending fences, and caring for others was a quiet kind of heroism, one that required patience, dedication, and selflessness, and Clara Bennett embodied all of it. Ethan watched Clara closely, fascinated by the ease and grace with which she moved from task to task. She would rise before sunrise, draw water from the well, tend the small garden behind the house, and then enter the kitchen to prepare breakfast for his parents. She managed all this without complaint, her movements calm and precise. Even when an unexpected problem arose, like a broken wheel on a cart or a sick cow, she handled it swiftly and calmly as if she had anticipated it all along. Ethan realized he had never seen such strength in quiet, everyday acts, and it both humbled and intrigued him. One morning, as Ethan helped Clara carry buckets of water to the garden, he finally asked a question that had been on his mind for days. "Clara," he said, "how did you manage all this? You've been here for years, caring for my parents, the house, the farm, everything. Didn't it ever feel too much?" Clara paused, setting down a bucket and wiping her hands on her apron. She looked at him with a gentle smile. "It wasn't always easy, Ethan. But someone had to do it. Your parents are good people, and I wanted to make sure they were safe. That's all." Ethan frowned, feeling a mix of guilt and admiration. I didn't even know. I was away, thinking I was building a future, but I never thought about what I was leaving behind. I should have been here." Clara shook her head softly. "We all have our paths, Ethan. You followed yours, I followed mine. What matters is what we do now. You're here now." Those words struck Ethan more than he expected. He had returned expecting relief, perhaps forgiveness, but instead he was met with quiet honesty and understanding. Clara did not scold him, did not lecture him, and did not demand anything in return. She simply continued her work, and Ethan felt a strange sense of awe. He realized that she had not only cared for his parents, but had also taught him without even trying an important lesson about responsibility, kindness, and selflessness. Over the next several days, Ethan tried to help in small ways. He carried firewood, fixed broken fences, and helped tend the animals. At first, it felt awkward. His hands were unaccustomed to the labor, and he often stumbled or made mistakes. Clara, however, never mocked him or scolded him. She offered gentle guidance, teaching him how to mend a fence properly or feed the chickens without startling them. Ethan began to see that work done with care was more meaningful than work done with haste, and that the rewards were not measured in money, but in the smiles, relief, and gratitude of those around him. Ethan also spent time with his parents, listening to their stories and learning about the small events in the town while he had been away. They spoke of neighbors who had fallen ill, of children who had grown up too quickly, and of moments of quiet joy that had happened in his absence. His mother's eyes would light up when she recalled memories of Ethan as a boy, and his father would shake his head with a gentle laugh, teasing him about some mischief he had caused. These conversations reminded Ethan of the warmth of family, the simple joy of connection, and the deep sense of belonging that he had been missing for so long. Clara's presence also drew him into the community in ways he had never experienced. She introduced him to neighbors, explained the small conflicts that had arisen, and showed him how people relied on each other for support. Ethan had been used to solving problems with money or influence, but here, solutions came from cooperation, empathy, and trust. He watched Clara help a family repair a roof after a storm, assist a sick child with home remedies, and organize neighbors to distribute supplies after a flood. Each act reminded him that true wealth lay not in gold or land, but in compassion and human connection. One afternoon, as the sun hung high in the sky, Ethan found himself alone with Clara in the garden. She was planting seeds for the next season, her hands covered in soil, and the sun highlighted the determination and focus in her eyes. Ethan hesitated, unsure how to begin. "Clara," he said finally, I don't know if I can ever repay you for everything you've done. You saved my parents, and you've done so much more for them and this town, for all of us. I don't even know where to start." Clara looked at him, her expression calm but firm. "Ethan, I didn't do any of it for repayment. I did it because it was right. That's all. What matters is that you learn something from this, about yourself, about your family, and about the people around you. That's more important than money or thanks." Her words sank deep into Ethan's heart. He had spent so much of his life thinking that success was measured by wealth and recognition, but Clara's quiet courage and dedication showed in a different way. He began to understand that true strength came not from what one could command or buy, but from what one could give freely, without expectation. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan's relationship with Clara grew stronger. They worked side by side, laughed together, and shared quiet moments of reflection. He found himself admiring her not only for her strength and skill, but also for her unwavering kindness and patience. She challenged him without ever raising her voice, to be better, to think beyond himself, and to consider the impact of his actions on others. Slowly, he began to shed the arrogance and pride that had defined much of his life. One evening, after a long day of tending the fields, Ethan and Clara sat on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the hills. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, the air filled with the scent of flowers and freshly turned soil. Ethan felt a quiet sense of peace he had never known. "I used to think that traveling, making deals, and building wealth was everything," he said softly. "But now I see that I've been blind to what really matters." Clara nodded, her eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. "It's never too late to change, Ethan. Life will give us lessons in its own time. The important thing is that we listen and learn from them." Ethan realized then that Clara had not only cared for his parents and his home, but had also begun to change him. Her actions, her patience, and her courage had opened his eyes to the kind of man he wanted to be, someone who valued love, kindness, and responsibility above all else. And though he still had much to learn, he felt a growing determination to stay, to help, and to make amends for the years he had spent away. By the time a month had passed, Ethan had become a part of the household in ways he never imagined. He knew how to feed the animals, repair fences, and even prepare a simple meal. More importantly, he had begun to understand the quiet satisfaction that came from helping others without expecting anything in return. He saw how his parents thrived under Clara's care, and how the entire community had benefited from her selflessness, and he realized that his life of wandering and wealth had been empty without this sense of purpose and connection. As Ethan lay in bed one night, listening to the soft wind through the trees and the occasional hoot of an owl, he thought about how much he had missed and how much he still had to make right. He had returned too late in many ways, but he still had the chance to learn, to grow, and to be a better son, neighbor, and man. And at the center of this transformation was Clara, the widow who had quietly saved his parents and, unknowingly, had begun to save him as well. For the first time in years, Ethan felt that he truly belonged somewhere, not because of wealth or success, but because he was finally home, learning the value of care, compassion, and the strength found in simple, everyday acts. He realized that the journey ahead would be long, filled with challenges and lessons, but with Clara by his side and the love of his parents guiding him, he was ready to face it all. As the days passed, Ethan began to feel a deeper sense of responsibility, not just for his parents, but for the life around him. Every morning he rose before sunrise, following Clara into the fields. He had once thought of hard work as a means to earn money, power, or recognition, but here it meant something far greater. It was about sustaining life, supporting those you loved, and protecting the fragile bonds that tied a community together. Clara's quiet determination guided him, showing him that true strength lay in consistency, patience, and care. One particular morning, as Ethan carried a heavy basket of apples from the orchard, he noticed Clara moving gracefully among the trees, carefully checking each branch. The orchard had suffered during a recent storm, and some of the trees were weakened, their fruits bruised and falling too early. Clara moved from tree to tree, pruning broken branches, inspecting leaves, and speaking softly to the trees as though they could hear her. Ethan watched her for a moment, struck by the gentleness with which she treated every living thing. "I never realized trees could need care as much as people," he said softly, almost to himself. Clara smiled, not stopping her work. "Everything has a life, Ethan. The trees, the animals, the soil, even people. If you don't care for them, they suffer. And if you do care, even in small ways, they grow stronger. That's why I've always believed in helping wherever I can." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. For years he had rushed through life, chasing wealth and recognition, leaving behind those who needed him most. Now, seeing Clara care so patiently for the orchard, for his parents, and for the community, he realized how blind he had been. He knelt down, examining a broken branch, and tried to mimic her careful movements, but he kept fumbling, cutting too much or too little. Clara noticed and came over, guiding his hands gently. "Patience, Ethan. Don't rush. You'll learn with practice." Over the next weeks, their days were filled with small but meaningful work. They repaired fences, tended animals, helped neighbors with chores, and even organized a small market where the townspeople could trade goods. Each task, no matter how simple, brought new lessons. Ethan began to understand the value of persistence, humility, and teamwork. He realized that leadership was not about commanding others or showing off wealth. It was about listening, helping, and taking responsibility when others depended on you. One afternoon, news arrived that shook the household. A fire had broken out on a neighbor's farm during a dry spell. The flames were small at first, but were quickly spreading toward other homes. Clara immediately gathered water buckets and rallied the neighbors. Ethan's heart pounded as he grabbed a bucket and ran alongside her. For the first time in years, he felt the adrenaline of acting for something more important than profit or adventure. Together, with the community, they formed a line from the well to the burning farm, dousing the flames as best they could. Ethan worked tirelessly, carrying water, helping neighbors save livestock, and supporting the weaker hands. He watched Clara move from person to person, calming frightened children, encouraging the elderly, and making sure everyone worked safely. Her courage and determination were awe-inspiring. For the first time, Ethan saw the true meaning of heroism, not in wealth, fame, or titles, but in selfless action, bravery, and care for others. When the fire was finally under control, the community gathered to assess the damage. The neighbor's barn was partially destroyed, but the house and animals had been saved. Ethan, covered in soot and exhausted, looked at Clara, who was smiling despite the smoke-stained dress and tired eyes.
"You were amazing," he said, genuinely awed. Clara shook her head.
We did this together. That's what matters. Everyone helped. That's how we survive, by caring for one another. That evening, as the sun set over the fields, Ethan sat on the porch, reflecting on the day's events. He realized how much he had taken for granted in his life: the warmth of his parents, the strength of the community, and the courage and kindness of someone like Clara. For the first time, he felt the weight of his past mistakes, the years he had spent away, and the relationships he had neglected. And yet, amidst the guilt, there was hope. He saw that change was possible, that he could become a better son, a better neighbor, and perhaps even a better man. A few days later, Ethan's parents fell ill unexpectedly. A sudden fever struck, leaving them weak and bedridden. Clara immediately took charge, tending to their needs, preparing medicine, and ensuring they were comfortable. Ethan, feeling helpless at first, tried to assist. He brought water, prepared meals, and even sat by their bedside, holding their hands as they rested. He realized that wealth could not fix this. Money could not buy health, attention, or care. Only presence, patience, and love could make a difference. During this time, Ethan learned even more from Clara. She taught him how to administer remedies, how to soothe his parents' fears, and how to remain calm under pressure. She never complained, never expressed frustration, and never sought praise. Her focus remained entirely on the well-being of others. Ethan found himself reflecting on the life he had led, how often he had acted with self-interest, chasing wealth and status while ignoring the people who truly mattered. Now, watching Clara move with quiet determination, he understood the depth of selflessness and humility. One evening, as he sat with his father, Ethan spoke softly. "Dad, I know I've been gone too long. I chased so many things, thinking they were important, but I see now that I've missed what truly matters." Robert Cole, weak but smiling, squeezed his son's hand. "It's never too late to change, Ethan. What matters is that you are here now," his mother added, her voice gentle and warm, "and that you are learning to see the world through kindness, not through wealth or pride. Clara has been teaching you, even if you didn't realize it at first." Ethan's heart swelled with gratitude. He looked at Clara, who was quietly tending to his mother's needs, and he felt a deep respect and admiration he had never known before. It was more than attraction or friendship. It was a recognition of the strength, courage, and goodness that had quietly shaped his life and the lives of everyone around her. Weeks turned into months, and Ethan's transformation became increasingly evident. He was no longer the distant, proud man who had returned to Willow Creek. He became an active member of the community, helping neighbors, teaching children, and assisting with farm work. He learned to value patience, humility, and service over wealth and adventure. And Clara remained his guide, her example of kindness and courage, inspiring him every day. One day, as they walked together through the fields, Ethan paused and looked at Clara. "I used to think that life was about success, wealth, and recognition," he said. "But now I understand. It's about love, care, and courage. You've taught me more than anyone ever has, Clara." Clara smiled softly, her eyes reflecting the golden sunlight. "I only showed you the way, Ethan. The choice to change, to grow, and to learn was yours. True strength is in choosing to be better, even when it's hard." That moment marked a turning point in Ethan's life. He realized that he had finally understood the lessons Clara had been quietly teaching him all along. He could no longer think of himself as a man defined by wealth or adventure. He had to be defined by love, responsibility, and the courage to do what was right. He had to become someone worthy of the trust and care that had been given to him. But change was not easy. There were moments when doubt crept in, when he wondered if he was truly capable of living up to the example set by Clara, his parents, and the community. Yet with each passing day, each act of care and service, he grew stronger. The fire at the neighbor's farm, the illness of his parents, and the quiet challenges of daily life had taught him that courage and goodness were not about grand gestures. They were about persistence, compassion, and action, even when no one was watching. As part 3 drew to a close, Ethan found himself at a crossroads. He could no longer return to the wandering, self-centered life he had once led. The world of wealth and adventure could wait. Here in Willow Creek, with his parents recovering and Clara by his side, he had discovered a new purpose. He was ready to embrace it, to continue learning, and to prove that the heart could change, even after years of mistakes. Ethan's life had changed in ways he could never have imagined. The quiet days in Willow Creek, the work alongside Clara, and the responsibility of caring for his parents had slowly shaped him into a man he barely recognized. He no longer measured his worth by wealth or adventures. Instead, he began to understand the power of kindness, courage, and genuine connection. But true transformation is often tested at the moment we least expect, and Ethan's courage was about to face its greatest challenge. It was a late summer afternoon when a storm swept across Willow Creek. Dark clouds rolled in from the west, bringing heavy rain and strong winds. The townspeople scrambled to secure their homes, animals, and crops, but nature's fury was relentless. Trees swayed violently, roofs leaked, and the little creek near the town began to rise. Ethan and Clara moved quickly, helping neighbors tie down supplies, bring animals inside, and carry children to safety. The storm seemed unending, and the roar of thunder shook the earth. Amid the chaos, Clara noticed smoke rising from the edge of the town. One of the barns belonging to a nearby farmer had caught fire, likely struck by lightning. The flames spread fast, fueled by the dry hay and strong winds. Panic set in among the farmers, but Clara stayed calm. "Ethan!" she shouted over the roar of the wind. "We have to help!" "We can't let the fire spread to the houses." Without hesitation, Ethan grabbed a bucket and ran beside her. He felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the same feeling he had experienced during the fire weeks ago. But this time the storm made it far more dangerous. Rain fell in heavy sheets. Lightning illuminated the sky, and the wind threatened to blow the flames in every direction. But Clara moved with purpose, directing others, forming a line of people passing buckets, and shouting instructions over the chaos. Ethan followed her, carrying water, helping push back the flames, and guiding neighbors to safety. As they fought the fire, a sudden gust of wind blew a burning branch toward Clara. Ethan reacted instinctively, pushing her out of harm's way. The branch fell near him, and in the chaos he stumbled, twisting his ankle and barely keeping his balance. Pain shot through his leg, but he refused to give up. Clara glanced at him, eyes wide with concern. "Ethan! Are you okay?" she shouted. "I'm fine," he called back, gritting his teeth. "We have to save the barn." Despite the injury, Ethan continued to fight the fire. The storm raged on, and the effort seemed endless. He realized that wealth, influence, or experience could not protect him in this moment. Only courage, quick thinking, and determination could. Every muscle in his body ached. Every breath was heavy. But he pressed on. Clara's presence beside him gave him strength. Her calm, focused courage inspired him. reminding him that fear could be overcome when someone acts out of love and responsibility. After what felt like hours, the fire was finally under control. The barn was damaged, but the surrounding homes and animals were safe. The townspeople gathered together, exhausted, drenched, and relieved. Ethan sank to the ground, his ankle throbbing, and looked at Clara. She was smiling faintly, her hair plastered to her face, eyes bright despite the exhaustion. "You were incredible," he said, panting. Clara shook her head. "No, Ethan, we were incredible together. That's how things get done, by helping each other. That's what matters." As the storm passed and the sun broke through the clouds, Ethan walked slowly back to his parents' home. Thinking about how fragile life could be, he realized that for all his years of chasing wealth and adventure, he had never truly faced danger, responsibility, or the fear of losing someone he loved. Now, in this storm alongside Clara, he had experienced what it meant to act selflessly, to protect others, and to face fear without hesitation. That evening, as Ethan tended to his sore ankle and rested, he noticed Clara sitting quietly by the fireplace, knitting a simple scarf for his mother. Her calm composure after the chaos amazed him. He felt a deep gratitude mixed with a sense of awakening. "Clara," he said softly, sitting down beside her, "you've shown me so much. Today I think I finally understand what it means to be brave, not for glory, not for money, but for people who need you. I want to be that person. Always." Clara looked at him, her eyes gentle. "Ethan, bravery isn't about grand gestures. It's about the small choices you make every day. Choosing to help, to stay, to care, even when it's difficult. Today, you made those choices."
You fought through fear and pain to protect others. That's real courage.
Her words struck Ethan deeply. He had spent so long defining himself by wealth, adventure, and status, but now he realized that none of that mattered in the face of life's true tests. True strength was measured by kindness, love, and courage in action. And Clara, through her calm determination, unwavering care, and selfless courage, had shown him the way. In the days that followed, Ethan continued to care for his parents and help the community recover from the storm. The experience had left him changed. He no longer saw life as a series of achievements or acquisitions. Instead, he understood that the moments of real importance were those where he could protect, support, and uplift others. Every small act of kindness, every hour of labor, every gesture of care mattered more than any amount of money he could ever earn. Ethan's parents began to recover, their strength returning gradually. They watched with pride as their son worked tirelessly, not for recognition or reward, but because he had learned the value of love and responsibility. "Ethan," his father said one evening, "you've changed. I see it in the way you care, the way you act, and the way you think about others. You've grown into the man we always hoped you would be." Margaret Cole, his mother, took his hand gently, and Clara has been a part of that change. She's shown you what true kindness and courage look like, and now you carry it in your heart. That is worth more than all the wealth in the world. Ethan looked at Clara, who was quietly sitting nearby, and felt a mixture of gratitude, respect, and admiration. She had not only saved his parents countless times, but had also changed his life, opening his eyes to what really mattered. He realized that her influence went far beyond her actions. She had taught him lessons he could never have learned on his own. One evening, after helping a neighbor rebuild a damaged fence, Ethan and Clara walked together under the fading sunlight. The fields glowed golden, and the air smelled of fresh earth and flowers. Ethan felt a calm he had never known before. "Clara," he said softly, I know I've made so many mistakes in my life. I left, I ignored my family, I chased things that didn't matter, but I want to change that. I want to live differently, to be better, to honor the love and care I've been shown, and I want to do it with you by my side. Clara paused, looking at him with a mixture of warmth and caution. Ethan, what matters is your heart. If you truly mean what you say, your actions will show it. Change isn't easy, and it isn't fast. But you've already taken the first step by understanding what matters. Ethan nodded. I will. I promise. I don't want to go back to the life I had before. I want to be present, to care, to protect, and to love. I want to be someone worthy of the trust and courage you and my parents have shown me. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, Ethan felt a sense of purpose stronger than he had ever known. The storm had tested him, forced him to confront fear, responsibility, and the fragility of life. And through it all, Clara had been his guide, his teacher, and his inspiration. He realized that the challenges he had faced were not punishments or misfortunes. They were lessons, shaping him into a man capable of true courage, compassion, and love. By the time the night fell and the stars lit up the sky, Ethan knew that his life had changed forever. He had faced danger, fear, and responsibility, and he had emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. He had seen what it meant to care for others without expectation, to act selflessly, and to protect life in its most vulnerable moments. And at the center of this transformation was Clara Bennett, the widow who had saved his parents and, in the process, changed his heart. Ethan finally understood the meaning of true heroism. It was not wealth, fame, or adventure. It was courage, kindness, and the willingness to act for the good of others, even when it was hard or dangerous. And as he looked at Clara standing quietly beside him, he realized that he had also discovered the meaning of love, not the fleeting excitement of desire, but the deep, enduring connection that grows from respect, care, and shared courage. After the storm had passed and the fires were extinguished, Willow Creek slowly returned to its quiet rhythm. The townspeople worked together to repair fences, rebuild barns, and restore their homes. Ethan spent each day alongside Clara and his parents, helping wherever he could. He had learned that life was not about grand adventures or wealth, but about the daily acts of love, courage, and responsibility that shaped the world around him. Every small task now held meaning. The planting of seeds, feeding the animals, mending fences, and checking on neighbors in need. Ethan's parents were steadily recovering, their strength returning day by day. They smiled more, laughed more, and their home was filled with warmth once again. Margaret often stood in the kitchen, watching Ethan and Clara work together, feeling a quiet joy at the transformation she could see in her son. Robert would shake his head with a gentle smile, noticing the way Ethan no longer acted with impatience or pride, but with care and thoughtfulness. It was clear to them that Ethan had changed, and that the lessons he had learned through Clara's guidance and the challenges of the storm had deeply reshaped his heart. Clara remained at the center of all this, quietly giving, helping, and caring, without seeking attention. But Ethan now understood the true depth of her impact, not just on his parents, but on him, on the community, and on the life of the town itself. Her courage, patience, and selflessness had not only protected lives, but had also shown him what it meant to live fully, to care deeply, and to act with integrity. Every time he watched her calmly resolve a problem, soothe a frightened child, or lift a neighbor's spirits, he felt an overwhelming admiration and gratitude. One morning, as they worked in the garden, Ethan paused to look at Clara. The sun was warm, the soil freshly turned, and the plants were thriving under her care. He realized that he wanted more than admiration or gratitude. He wanted to honor her in a way that reflected the respect, love, and trust he had grown to feel. He reached out, gently touching her hand. "Clara," he said softly, "I don't know if I can ever repay you for everything you've done, not just for my parents, but for me. You've shown me what it means to be brave, kind, and responsible. I want to spend the rest of my life proving that I've learned those lessons, that I can live in a way that honors you and my parents." Clara looked at him, eyes calm and steady. "Ethan, the lessons you've learned aren't about repayment. They're about choice. You've already shown that you can change, that you can act with kindness and courage. That is the greatest gift you can give, to live well, to help others, and to carry forward what you've learned." Ethan nodded, but his heart swelled with a new determination. He realized that life was not just about learning lessons, it was about living them day after day and passing them on to others. He wanted to be a man who inspired others, just as Clara had inspired him. He wanted to create a home where love, care, and courage were as important as any wealth or achievement. The town began to notice the changes in Ethan as well. The proud, distant man who had once left for adventures was now present, attentive, and deeply involved in the community. Children looked up to him, not for his fortune, but for his willingness to help, his honesty, and his courage. Neighbors trusted him, not for what he could give them in money, but because they knew he would act with integrity and care. The reputation he had once earned through wealth and business was now replaced with something far stronger: the respect that comes from character and deeds. One afternoon, Ethan and Clara helped organize a small festival in the town square to celebrate the recovery of Willow Creek after the storm. The townspeople gathered, sharing food, stories, and laughter. Children ran freely, neighbors helped set up decorations, and the air was filled with joy and gratitude. Ethan stood beside Clara, watching the community come together, and felt a sense of fulfillment unlike anything he had experienced in his travels or business ventures. He realized that success was not about wealth or adventure. It was about connection, service, and love. As the festival continued into the evening, Ethan finally spoke to Clara with the words he had carried in his heart for so long. "Clara," he said, taking her hand, "I've spent most of my life chasing things that didn't matter, but now I see what's truly important: love, courage, and responsibility. You've changed my life. You've taught me to be a better son, a better neighbor, and a better man. I don't want to spend another day without you in my life. Will you let me walk this path with you side by side?" Clara's eyes softened, and a smile spread across her face. She squeezed his hand gently. "Ethan, I've seen your heart. I've watched you grow, learn, and change. I believe in the man you've become, and I trust that you will continue to live with courage and kindness. I will walk with you." The relief, joy, and love that Ethan felt in that moment were overwhelming. For the first time, he realized that he was home, not just in Willow Creek, but in the life he was building with Clara, with his parents, and within the community he now served. He understood that life's true wealth came not from gold or adventures, but from love, trust, and the courage to do what was right, even when it was difficult. In the weeks that followed, Ethan dedicated himself fully to this new life. He continued to work alongside Clara in the home and on the farm, helping neighbors and supporting the town in every way he could. He repaired old fences, planted new crops, cared for animals, and spent quiet evenings listening to his parents' stories and sharing his own reflections. Each day was an opportunity to live the lessons he had learned, to act with love, responsibility, and courage. Ethan also began mentoring the youth of Willow Creek, teaching them not only practical skills but also the values that Clara had instilled in him: kindness, perseverance, and the importance of helping others. He shared stories of his travels and mistakes, showing them that even those who stray from the right path can change if they are willing to learn and grow. The children listened eagerly, inspired not by his wealth or adventure, but by his honesty, humility, and transformation. As months turned into years, Ethan and Clara's bond grew stronger. They built a life together grounded in mutual respect, love, and shared purpose. Their home became a haven not just for themselves and Ethan's parents, but for anyone in need. Visitors often remarked on the warmth, kindness, and sense of community that radiated from the house. Ethan realized that the life he had once chased in distant lands, full of wealth, status, and adventure, paled in comparison to the fulfillment, joy, and meaning he had discovered at home, in service and in love. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, Ethan sat with his parents and Clara on the porch, watching the fields sway gently in the evening breeze. He reflected on the journey that had brought him here, from a proud, distant man chasing wealth to someone who had learned the meaning of courage, compassion, and true love. He realized that the greatest lessons in life often come from unexpected people and moments. Clara had saved his parents, taught him humility, and opened his heart in ways he could never have imagined. Robert Cole looked at his son with pride. "Ethan, you've become the man we always hoped you would be, not because of what you've earned or accomplished, but because of the heart you've shown. That is the greatest achievement of all," Margaret Cole added softly, "and Clara has been a gift to all of us. She has shown us what courage, kindness, and love truly mean. Together, you two have created a life that honors all that we hold dear." Ethan turned to Clara, taking her hand and smiling. "You've changed my life, Clara. You've taught me what really matters. I promise to spend every day living by the lessons you've shown me, and to be the kind of man worthy of you, my parents, and this community." Clara smiled back, her eyes filled with warmth. "Ethan, you already are that man. Now it's time to keep living it every day, in every choice you make. That is how love, courage, and kindness grow stronger." From that day forward, Ethan's life was no longer defined by wealth, adventure, or distance. It was defined by love, responsibility, and the courage to do what was right. He remained in Willow Creek, helping his parents, supporting the community, and building a life with Clara filled with warmth, respect, and enduring care. Together they showed that even the hardest hearts could change, that true heroism came from selfless acts, and that love, quiet, steady, and courageous, was the most powerful force in the world. And so Ethan Cole, the rich cowboy who had once returned too late, found redemption, purpose, and love. He discovered that life's greatest treasures were not measured in gold or adventure, but in the hearts we touch, the people we protect, and the courage we show in the quiet, everyday moments that truly define a life well lived.